Today we will complete Julius Caesar. It really is a wonderful play. Immediately, ad rem, to the matter, Latin, A-D-R-E-M. Okay, we're in Act 3. The assassination is complete. Brutus has spoken to the crowd, has given his succinct and oh so orderly and dispassionate presentation of the reasons why they thought it necessary to assassinate Julius Caesar. And the crowd, the listeners, the citizens, have all approved. But their approval is not very warm. It's just kind of casual. Then Brutus announces that he has permitted Mark Antony to address them too. And the crowd is kind of hostile. That Mark Antony, he better not say anything bad about Brutus, or will hurt him. Brutus is a great man. Brutus is honorable. And so Antony, in the most famous speech, really, the most famous speech in Shakespeare, if not in literature, Antony stands up to speak. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him, he says, and on and on. It's a very long speech. I'm not saying more famous than to be or not to be, than the platitudinous, the poor to be or not to be. But speech, not a soliloquy. Okay. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after the... it doesn't matter. Anyway, he says, I just want to be fair to Caesar. He was my friend and I loved him. He was kind to me and I loved him. But Brutus is an honorable man. They all are honorable men. He says that 7 times at intervals. And each time the doubts of the listeners and the readers grow, because he says such things as Caesar loved the common people. Caesar gave them huge gifts, parks, money, bread and food, entertainment. Did this seem cruel? Did this seem selfish of him? But Brutus says so, and Brutus is an honorable man. On and on it goes, step by step, and gradually the not very intelligent listeners are saying, Antony has a point. Was Caesar really so selfish, so craving power, so consumed by his own ambition? I think not. I think maybe he didn't deserve to die. But if he didn't deserve to die, what does that make Brutus and the other conspirators? It's painful, actually. It is painful. Since we're on that subject, and I was on it yesterday, there can be no question the presentation of the common people in Julius Caesar is painful. It makes us look like idiots. And the most painful thing is, I fear it's pretty close to true, myself included. Oh my God. Easily swayed, really, and swayed by stupid things. What really gets the crowd is when Antony shows emotion, and he's got, I'm sorry, I've got to weep. And he breaks down and weeps. Silence. Well, that will get them, us, me, every time. Oh, it's painful. We are depicted as idiots. And democracy is severely questioned in this play, I'm afraid. But it's not quite fair, but superficially. Okay. So, gradually, and then he says, and I want to tell you about Caesar's will. He left his will. Oh, I better not show you. It'll make you angry. Show us the will. Okay, well, first let's look at the body. And he pulls back the cover from the body. By the way, by this time, Brutus and the others are silently running They are running. They see where it's going, and they can't stop it. They can't suddenly interrupt Mark Antony, or the crowd would be on them. By the way, a detail I left out. Before Antony stands up to speak, excuse me, a messenger comes to Antony from Octavius. Now, this is the future, the first emperor, Octavius. He was Julius Caesar's great nephew, that is, a distant relative, and ward, which means that Caesar undertook to educate him and support him and protect him, kind of be a father to him. So he is, strictly speaking, a relative of Julius Caesar. So a messenger from him, Octavius, comes. Octavius at this point maybe 18 to 20 years old. I don't remember exactly, but he's young. Let's see, we can figure this out. He dies in 27 CE. If this is 44, and it is, 44 and 27 is 67, God, if he's 18, he's already 83. I mean, that is, he's already, if he's 17, he lived to be 83, possible. He's young. A couple of years off maybe, but he is young. Okay, so the messenger comes to Antony saying, Octavius is coming to Rome. He wants to see you. They are natural allies. They are the natural allies to oppose Brutus and the conspirators. The one because he was a blood relative of Caesar, the other because he was his great friend, like a son. Mark Antony. So Antony says, go tell him Rome is not a safe place. Nice. Better stay where he is, a few kilometers outside of Rome. And then he thinks about it and he says, no, wait. Stick around. Watch the outcome of my speech, and that will determine everything. What a man. What a man. He's one of these men, historically, he's one of these people presented with an opportunity. He sees it. Not everyone would. He dares to take it, but he's going to have to use intelligence and lucidity and strong willpower and courage. And he does it. And he does it in other situations too. Remarkable. Now Caesar was the same kind of man, it's true. I think basically Brutus was not. And Cassius was not. They were lesser men. Really. But we'll see what happens by Act 5. Okay. So then Antony gives his speech, and by the end, the crowd is furious, and they say, let's go and burn Brutus's and Cassius's homes. Let's kill them if we find them. Hooray, hooray. So then Antony comes back to the messenger and says, I see passions are stirring. It's a busy world. Go tell Octavius to meet me at Caesar's home, blah, 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 something. The whole world has changed in Act 3. Hugely. Twice. First with the murder of Julius Caesar, then with the speech of Mark Antony. Huge. Fortune turned her wheel. One full revolution. Shakespeare would say, if he didn't say it. Okay. Act 4. Oh, no. First, minor acts, Act 3. A poet named Cinna is walking through the streets. Here comes the mob. Hey, he was one of the conspirators, wasn't he? No, I'm not a conspirator. What's your name? Cinna. Kill him. One of the conspirators was Cinna. I'm Cinna the poet. I'm Cinna the poet. Kill him anyway. Democracy? Earlier, by the way, I better tell you, we have time. A distinct weakness of the play, the weakest part of the play, comes just before the assassination, early in Act 3. When Portia, remember Portia, Brutus's wife, who is so noble, such the perfect wife, perfect wife. She had even threatened to, she had done before in other situations, stabbed herself in the leg for some important reason, to show her strength of will. It's a kind of Roman thing. Never changing facial expression. That kind of immense will of to control pain, suffering, expression, a stoic attitude toward pain that really one must admire, I think. Okay. So then, just before the assassination, she says to her, she's very upset and she's very anxious. "Servant, run and give Brutus a message." And he stands there. "Well, what message shall I tell him?" "I don't know. I expected you back by now. Go there and come back and I'll think of a message." Women. This is cheap. These are what we Americans call cheap shots. That is, cheap, unsubstantiated kinds of satire of women. Now, you guys, you must remember that all the actors in these plays are men, or boys, and the women are played by boys. You must see Shakespeare in Love 50 times. One of the great films, I think, and wonderful for understanding Shakespeare. It's a fantasy, and by the way, if you're young, you can't see it or you're not supposed to. But when you're of age, and when your English must be pretty good if you're following my lectures. If your English is good enough to follow my lectures, your English is good enough to follow that film. I hope whenever you are able, you can see it because it's wonderful. About Shakespeare, of course. Okay, so women are depicted here as irrational, silly, can't keep a secret, can't control their emotions, and really it's terrible because we've already seen Portia capable, she said, and we believe it, of enduring great pain and showing stoic calm. And that's what the point here is, stoic. I'll talk about that philosophy sometime. I don't know that much about it, but... Okay, so, Act 4. Act 4 opens with a totally different... Wow, what a shift. Antony, Octavius, and Lepidus have formed the second triumvirate. And they are, of course, opposed to Brutus and Cassius. And they, Antony and company, control Rome, of course. Well, that's a big step toward securing power, to control Rome. Julius Caesar knew that. That's why he crossed the Rubicon. He who has Rome has huge power, and probably in the end the great power. The rebels, let's call Brutus, Cassius, and the guys, have fled finally to Asia Minor, Turkey, as we'll find them. First, the triumvirate. They're reading the will, and they're making lists of people who have to be put to death, and they're also going to try to change the will to make sure that certain sums of money and other things go to them rather than to the recipients, the legal recipients of the things of the will. Wow, what a cool, cynical Antony. On the other hand, I fear that power has to be this way, because Antony to Lepidus, Lepidus, your brother is going to have to die. Lepidus, I grant it, he must die. But your nephew or your cousin or your, let's say your cousin, has to die too. No problem. Whoa! These are cool guys. Cool and cynical, you'll have to say. But they are locked in a deadly struggle for life and death. Because what is happening here, and it's not clear enough until one speech, In fact, Antony gave the speech. When Antony was alone, before speaking, after he had shaken the hands of the conspirators, the bloody hands, he was alone with the body. Oh, I'm sorry I left this out, but it's important. Antony's alone, and he speaks to Caesar. Oh, I told you this. And he shows his true emotion. But he also predicts, prophesies, an immense civil war in which so much death will take place, so much suffering. I mentioned that too. Okay. Now, that civil war is going on, and the man or woman who is not willing to make such decisions will certainly die, will certainly lose. If they say these people must die, however closely aligned to or related to these guys they might be, then they surely must die. If they don't die, Octavius and Antony and Lepidus will surely die. It's pretty brutal. It's political reality at a high level, I think. Anyway, so forth. And Antony says to Lepidus, Lepidus, would you go get the Caesar's will? It's over. I'm not sure where it is. And Lepidus says, shall I meet you? Where shall I meet you afterwards? And Antony says, either here or at Caesar's house, let's say, or something. And he's gone. And here's Antony. This is a man fit to be sent on errands. This man is like a servant. Is it right that he should stand holder of 1/3 of the world? This man? He's like an ass whom I load gold on, say, and the ass trots and carries the gold to where I want it. Then I unload the gold and go out to the pasture and eat grass. Now, Octavius, younger, Octavius in a very difficult position. Octavius has to match wits with this person whom I'm calling the most intelligent person I can imagine, Antony. And young Octavius is either going to... No, Octavius needs... Antony needs Octavius. He's a blood relative of Caesar. If he opposes Octavius at this point, he will lose some serious support. Octavius needs Antony, too. Without Antony, he'll crumble. He's too young, he's too inexperienced, however sharp he might be. They need each other. But they are inevitably going to be enemies. And that's what happens, of course, in Antony and Cleopatra. They cannot feed together in one stall, and that stall is the world, the whole world. They cannot share the world, not these two guys. And that's what Antony and Cleopatra is about, which is on an even higher level. And I've already done it. It's the greatest of all plays. Okay, so back to our play. Octavius defends Lepidus. He says he's a good soldier, and you yourself have admired him. Yeah, but I'm afraid he is way over his head, as we would say in English, in this situation. And of course, Antony is right. But for the moment, they need Lepidus. In Antony and Cleopatra, I guess I must have said, when the crisis comes, Octavius finds a way to get rid of Lepidus. By that time, though, 10 years have passed, and Octavius is a different person, much more astute. Okay, so then we're preparing for a war, a direct clash. We shift now. Act 4 is wonderful, and Act 5, impossibly, even better. Very moving. I apologize in advance. I'm not going to be able. I can't do it without emotion, but I'll try to control it. Okay. Maybe if I raise my voice, that'll help. We shift to Asia Minor. Brutus with his army, Cassius with his army, are located not too far from each other. Their task to raise money, to raise soldiers, but they have large armies. And the question is, the big question is, when and where to meet the army of Octavius and Mark Antony. Lepidus has no role in the big battle that's coming up. By the way, in Act 5, much of Act 5 is consumed by the big battle, Philippi, which will determine who rules the world. Okay, so Brutus is in his tent waiting for Cassius, a visit from Cassius. We see him once again with his followers who admire him. Cassius arrives. Oh, they meet outside the tent. Cassius arrives very upset. This is not the Cassius we know of Act 1. Now, we haven't seen Cassius for a while. Well, we saw him in Act 3 telling Brutus, don't let Antony speak. But this, in Acts 4 and 5, we see a different Cassius completely. And the Cassius of Act 4, he's the same man. But our response to him, the situation is different, of course, and our response to him changes totally. Okay. Brutus, I'm so upset with you. You've sent me these terrible letters. You accuse me of this and that. This is terrible. Raises his voice. Brutus, the calmer of the two. Cassius, our soldiers mustn't see us quarrel. Come into the tent, into my tent, and tell me what's bothering you, and we'll work it out. Now, watch this. This is so tremendous. Okay, so they come in. You accuse me of taking bribes. You accuse me of bribing other people. You accuse me of corruption. Brutus, I sent for money from you, Cassius. I can't dirty my hands with bribe taking. I'm exaggerating only slightly. This is the Brutus that's hard to take. This is the Brutus whose honor is really vanity, whose honor is really self-righteousness, whose idealism, as idealism often is, frankly, idealism is often a mask for self-righteousness. Idealism is a weapon. Religious faith works this way too. It can be a weapon that people use on other people to demonstrate their own moral superiority. I'm a believer, you're not. I have the higher moral ground. I'm an idealist, you're not. I have the higher moral ground. Is this common? Very common. Look for it, look around. The self-proclaimed Christian, as Koreans like to say, meaning Protestant, meaning mostly Presbyterian in my experience, when he or she declares it, is often attempting to declare his or her moral superiority to the other person, especially if the other person, say, is a Buddhist. Now, I have heard this from Buddhist students of mine, but I've observed it too. I'm a Christian often means I'm morally superior to you. Try that one. Is that often the source of this person's faith? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Try that one. I seldom see that in Catholics. That's a Protestant self-righteousness, in my experience. Sorry if I offend you, but examine. Idealists are the same. All idealists? No. All Protestants? No. But many. Try it. I'm going to say it again. Idealists who don't have to call themselves idealists are often idealists because they at least feel moral superiority. But most important to them is to demonstrate or to impose their moral superiority on other people. It's one of the hypocrisies of religious faith. Of course religious faith has hypocrisies. Everything has hypocrisies. Being a teacher of Shakespeare has hypocrisies. Being anything has hypocrisies and vanities. Hypocrisies and vanities control us to a large extent, inescapably. And me too, of course. Am I not proud of the way I'm doing this? Sure. Hypocrisies and vanities. Okay, sorry. So Cassius is very upset, and Brutus's self-righteous idealism is very offensive in this. Yes, I had to bribe him. In the real world, of course, especially Asia Minor, where people are so sharp historically, they are merchants, and they are the sharpest merchants in the world, in that area of the world. Everyone agrees, they say. Maybe the Chinese are as sharp, or Singaporeans, I don't know. Okay, of course, bribery and all kinds of things go on. Cassius becomes very upset, and he says, Brutus, don't talk to me that way. You move me too much. And Brutus, are you threatening me? Am I supposed to be fearful, and am I supposed to cower in fear every time Cassius is testy, every time Cassius is petulant, P-E-T-U-L, irritable? Come on. And Cassius says, I admit it, I have a bad temper, but don't test it. Don't push it. Don't do this to me. And Brutus once again says, if I want to, I'll use you as a toy to amuse me. Make you angry to amuse me. Whoa! Cassius is nearly ready to draw his sword. What breaks... some little utterance breaks some of the tension. But this Cassius, who was so cool, so manipulative, so cerebral. Jan Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. That Cassius of Act 1 is now a kind of hysterical man. Very emotional. And I assure you, we like him much better. If not now, in Act 5. Okay, here we go. So, something breaks the tension, and they agree, they drink a drink together, and Cassius is so moved. I guess I like that kind of emotion, but I assume most other people would too. He is so moved even after the reconciliation. He's so moved that he was so moved. And he's so relieved that peace and harmony between these two guys prevails again. It's really wonderful, I think. But watch this, because suddenly we learn Brutus tells Cassius Portia is dead. Now we have to think here, reader and listener. Did Brutus just learn of Portia's death? No, he knew of Portia's death throughout this scene. Before the beginning of the scene, he knew Portia's death has been a burden on him throughout this scene. Wow. How did she die? Suicide. What suicide? She swallowed hot coals. Wow. Well, clearly she was insane. She had gone insane, missing Brutus. The emotions in Act 4 are very powerful, especially after the cynical scene of Antony and Octavius. Wow. I forgot that this was so powerful. By the end of Act 4, we admire Brutus a lot. If we don't admire Cassius, I think we love him. Now, the two of them together, they're going to have to lose this war. They cannot beat Antony. They cannot beat Octavius. But they can almost, and they come very close. Then they sit down and discuss strategy. Now, Antony's army, I'll just call it, is headed for Philippi. The question is, should we wait in Asia Minor and let them come to us, or go to meet them? And Brutus and Cassius disagree again. Brutus says, first Cassius speaks, let them come to us. They will be exhausted. They will exhaust supplies. We will be fresh and ready. Brutus says, I don't think that's a good idea because, and the reasons he gives are pretty good, because much of the population between Philippi and where they are in Asia Minor is basically hostile to Brutus and Cassius. And so Brutus thinks that their army, Antony's army, will become stronger, gain strength and momentum as the army approaches. And Cassius does not disagree. But at the moment, remember, the ascendancy, that is, the recognized superiority of Brutus is absolute. Now, Brutus is normally morally superior to everybody around him. We know this. The question is what he does with that. It's been clear from the beginning of the play. He's an idealist, but he's an admirable man in just about every way. A serious flaw came when he rationalized his way into killing Caesar. That can be explained. And I think it torments him already, though we don't hear it. He does say in the bribery discussion, was this the reason why we killed great Caesar? So that we could take bribes? No, we have to be morally superior to that kind of thing. And he's right. He's right. So the clash between the two, Brutus and Cassius, for the moment, wonderful, resolved. Okay, so they decide they will meet, they will go to Philippi for the great, great battle. Another of the decisions was, should they put all of their destiny on the outcome of one battle, because that's what they're doing. And I guess they decide to do that. And Antony, too. But Antony is convinced. Antony is by far the greatest military figure of all of them. Antony is the greatest military mind in the world right then. So Antony knows very well what he's doing, and Antony knows that he can and probably will win. But of course he knows that in battle strange things happen, unpredictables. But he's the cool, sharp, but passionate and courageous man. Okay. So now we're headed for the battle. First, omens. Okay. We move into Act 5. I hope I'm not skipping anything, but I don't think so. We move into Act 5. And we have... God. Whoa! It's so... Three great scenes are moving in Act 5. Okay, I'll give you an outline. Maybe that'll help me. 1. Brutus and Cassius's conversation before the battle. 2. The death of... The death of Cassius. 3. The death of Brutus. Wow, all this in one act? Wow, this is heavy. This is the only other things that are more moving are Lear and Antony. That's interesting, actually. I mean, the ending, Act 5 of Hamlet, not much. Act 5 of Macbeth, not much. Even Othello, not much. Julius Caesar is great. So I'll try to deal with these a little dispassionately. Yes, that's my word. Okay, first, Cassius, just before the battle, Cassius and Brutus are talking. Brutus, we don't know how this day will end, but what do you intend to do if we lose the battle? Basically, their conversation, this is good, is a confrontation between the two dominant philosophies of the Romans, Stoicism and Epicureanism. Now, Stoicism, let's see now, in Epicureanism, which is basically atomism, we're nothing but atoms anyway. There is no soul, there is no afterlife, death is just death. And death is meaningless. So the pure Epicurean both of them really are trying to deal with death. Both philosophies squarely face death. And really, according to Plato, and the way philosophy should be perhaps, moral philosophy definitely, is learning how to die. Many philosophies have become much more academic, metaphysical, in attempts to explain the universe. At best, they only tangentially teach us how to face death. But Stoicism and Epicureanism face it squarely, more than Plato does, I think. Anyway, so Brutus says, the question is, I'm forgetting some of this, but the question is to commit suicide or not. That's the whole question. So Brutus says, if we lose and if I'm taken captive, well, that's the way it is. I can accept it. And then Cassius says, do you mean you can accept being put in that cage, drawn through the streets of Rome, being taunted and mocked and abused by the Roman populace? No. I will never. Brutus bears too great a spirit for that. No. I will certainly not do that. Suicide. Cassius agrees completely. Then they have their sorry. Then they have their very moving farewell. If we meet again, good. If I say the words, I'll never get through this. So, and I know the words. But if we meet again, good. If we win, wonderful. If we lose, farewell. Okay, moving on. Then the generals meet in the field before the battle. An unimpressive scene, really, in which they hurl insults at each other. Antony getting the best, because after all, when you cowards murdered the great man Julius Caesar, how did you feel? How did you feel when you put the knife in his back? And Antony has the moral superiority, which is a little dubious. Moral superiority is always a little dubious. A moment on that. There's always the moral superiority of the victim and the loser. One of the great consolations of life is, if I'm oppressed, I can at least assume that I am morally superior to my oppressor. I'm not oppressing him, he's oppressing me. This is one of the vanities of the whole subject of morality, for that matter. Moral superiority. It's inescapable, we love it, we need it, but it pervades all of our moral systems, and vanity does too. Sometime I'll talk about that, and I'd love to try to sort it out with you. Okay, then the battle is on. Oh, Cassius had... when Brutus and Cassius were talking, he said... yeah, here's where it comes. Okay, the point is, are there gods, are there signs from the gods, or not? Stoicism is a monistic system. I'm getting lost there, but Cassius says that on our way up here to Philippi, an eagle befriended us. And the eagle came every day. We fed him. It's a lot like the feeding of the albatross in Rime of the Ancient Mariner of Coleridge. But just before we got here, crows came. The eagle left, and the crows came and followed us all the way, the final part of the journey to Philippi. An omen? Any Roman would think so. I think any Korean would too, and maybe most people would. Death, a bad sign. So they're very superstitious, and that's one of the points of the play. Remember, Caesar was very superstitious, exceedingly. Okay, the battle. The battle has two parts, basically. Now, Antony's army meets that of Cassius. Brutus's army meets that of Octavius, at two wings. And at first, Antony's army gets the better of Cassius' army, But Brutus's army gets the better of Octavius's. But what happens then is kind of key, because Brutus's army then starts to plunder, and they get distracted from battle right when they had the great advantage, when they could have won. They could have won, but his army starts plundering and looting. Antony's army, more disciplined, does not turn to that, and for a moment, though, it's all questionable, because it's, they won this battle, we won that. Either side could still win the battle, and the war, and the empire, because what's at stake here is the empire. A huge empire. Our year, 43, 42. Almost the same year. Okay. In any case, now comes, oh boy. I gotta get through this. Okay. Cassius is with Titinius. Titinius has been a friend of his all his life. Best friends. Best friends. Pindarus, a third person, is with them. And Cassius says, today's my birthday. He had told Brutus this too. And he had a feeling that on his birthday, superstition, his life might come full circle. End. And so, but anyway, on the battlefield, Pindarus, my eyesight is kind of weak. Go up on that hill. Titinius, Titinius, ride over there, see what's happening in those tents, and come back, please. We have to know whether those are our friends or our enemies. Gone. Titinius rides. Pindarus, get up on that hill, please, and tell me what happens. Okay, Pindarus, who is kind of a servant. I see him riding. I see him enter the camp. He's surrounded by people. He's off his horse. He's taken captive. They're enemies. Oh my God. Cassius can't stand it. Let's say he can't stand the loss of his friend. He can't stand the sense that he sent his great friend, his great friend to his death. Pindarus, come on down. Pindarus, hold this sword. I want to die now. You promised to do anything I said. I saved your life in battle in Parthia. You swore to do anything I asked you to do. Do this. You must do it. But then you're a freed man. This is typical Roman stuff. We remember in Act 4 of Antony and Cleopatra, we remember Eros with Antony, who was supposed to do the same thing, killed himself instead. Pindarus wants to do it, but he can't do it. Really, his oath to Antony Cassius is too great. He holds it. Cassius runs on the sword, and it's the same sword, he says, with which he killed Caesar. That can't be. But he's glad to die on that sword. He's dead. His dying speech, short, great. Okay. Re-entered Titinius with friends. Pindarus is gone. With friends. It turns out, no, they were not enemies. They were friends. He comes back. Okay, I'm going to have to do it shorter. Okay, Titinius knows. He knows what has happened, and he knows why. Okay, in brief, what happens is Titinius kills himself. I can't tell you more about it, but it's very powerful. I forgot this. Along comes Brutus. Great speech. He comes, he finds the dead bodies of Cassius and Titinius. side by side. The best speech maybe in the play. I guess the best speech in the play. Because what he says is that it's inconceivable that there be two greater Romans than these guys. It's Brutus's great moment. It's his great moment. Anyway, so there follows then, I won't go into detail, I can't do it. There follows Brutus's dying scene. And Brutus's dying scene is much longer. Same thing, suicide. He's surrounded by friends. Hold the sword for me, Volumnius, will you? We've been friends all our lives. Not me. I can't do that. I won't do that. See, same thing to the other three. Finally, one of them does it for him, and Brutus is dead. Then in come Antony and Octavius for the end of the play. I've got some things to comment on here that are important. They are both they're both moved, and they both speak well, especially Antony, about Brutus, the dead Brutus. They're also very kind to the survivors, because after all, they're all they're all great Romans, and that's true. But the closing word is had by Octavius, and remember, in Shakespeare, always the person who has the closing speech is the dominant person on the stage, and that's Octavius, and that's interesting too. Because, strictly speaking, at that time, Octavius, Antony, same, but Octavius gets the closing speech. Now, let's deal with the very interesting question of what attitude does Shakespeare then present of Brutus, specifically Brutus, in this play? Because this came up yesterday, and I would like to examine it with you a little bit, and it's kind of important, I think. Because by reputation, Shakespeare glorifies Brutus, and Dante, as you know, puts Brutus in Satan's jaws along with Judas Iscariot, the two of them as the ultimate traitors, deserving ultimate pains of hell. Okay, I think Shakespeare's attitude is that of a cool dramatist, interested in his characters, admiring but not unconditionally at all. Now, it's true that Act 5 glorifies Brutus, but is Brutus the man, not Brutus the political rebel, the assassin? Let's look at what this play is really about, once again, and the ultimate question of if it's a great play, why it's a great play. It's a play, it's the tragedy of Brutus. What do we have here? We have a man who, by all accounts, noble, the word for him, noble, who, for some not very good reasons and under confused and a little bit exhausted and just confused and exhausted and perplexed in the extreme, as Othello says of himself. Same thing. In fact, that's one thing that happens to all the heroes. Perplexed in the extreme. Joins in the conspiracy to kill Caesar. From then on, oh, by the way, when he dies, he says he's much happier about killing himself than he had been about killing Caesar. Okay, but I'm going to analyze this thing, and that'll be good as a flight from emotion, too. Okay, what is Caesar's attitude toward Brutus? Tragic. A tragic hero. A good tragic hero. That is one whom we can admire. what happens once again in a tragedy? We watch a person, well, in the Aristotelian sense, Aristotle, in the Poetics, which still is the best, I think. We watch a man who is better than us every time, much better than us, caught up in a serious perplexity. For some reason, usually some flaw in his character, and if there's a flaw in Brutus's character, I think, what is it? It's his own notion. It might even be his own notion of his own nobility, a little bit self-righteousness, but he tries to guard against it too, but he's caught. This makes it much more subtle, really, than the other tragedies. What is that flaw of Brutus? He allows himself to be worked on, to be influenced. He allows himself to become too involved in the problem, in the question. He agonizes a little too much to the point of exhaustion, and then he makes the wrong decision, apparently. Even that's not absolutely clear, though. It's not absolutely clear that it was the wrong decision, but it's kind of the wrong decision. In Shakespeare, it is the wrong decision. Now, notice what we're saying then. Shakespeare is said to glorify Brutus, but Shakespeare implies that the decision Brutus made was wrong. Simply by being a tragic hero, Brutus was wrong. Hamlet was wrong. Othello was wrong. Macbeth was wrong. They were all wrong. We must learn not from their mistakes, but we watch better people than ourselves caught up in making wrong decisions and struggling like flies in the spider's web to escape from the consequences of those decisions, only finally to surrender with some lucidity, surrender to death and to the fact that they were wrong. This is what happens, and this is what happens with Brutus. This is what happens also with Hamlet, with Othello, yes, with all of them. That pattern, I'm going to repeat that pattern because it bears repetition. We watch a nobler person than ourselves, Aristotle says, who has maybe some flaw. The flaw is hard to pinpoint in Julius Caesar. In Brutus, it's hard to pinpoint. Let's leave that aside for a moment. That part of the theory doesn't work, I think, so well here. It doesn't really, okay. But he makes a wrong decision, but under extremely difficult conditions, and we can understand that. And no one would think himself, I think, superior to Brutus. So, as Aristotle says, we watch, horrified, as the great man struggles with a decision, makes the wrong decision, struggles to escape from the consequences of that decision as they come crashing down on him, then finally achieve a certain peace, a certain harmony, a certain self-knowledge to some degree, and accept death calmly and heroically. That's what happens in each of these plays, every one of them, of Shakespeare's plays. And of Brutus, this is absolutely true too. He's among the best. He is one of the most lovable, I think maybe the noblest, not counting Antony, because Antony's dead in Act 4, and even with Antony. So, that's what happens in this play. What then is Shakespeare's attitude? Approval? Glorification? Not really. He glorifies a tragic hero, but once again, to repeat that key idea, the tragic hero is by definition wrong. The tragic hero makes bad mistakes, which result in his own destruction. That's Shakespeare's attitude toward Brutus. That's not approval. Shakespeare doesn't care about hell and heaven. To his credit, Shakespeare doesn't care about hell and heaven. Shakespeare cares about great poetry, great drama, great analysis, penetration, understanding, if we can, or the pathos of life, the moving qualities of life, the tragic, basically tragic destiny that it means to be a human being. From this point of view, Shakespeare, Homer, in Book 24 of the Iliad, same. Any mention of God or the gods or hell or heaven? Yeah, Othello's worried about being in hell. I don't think the others are. It's irrelevant, and it should be irrelevant. Our little systems of rewards and punishments and scorecards, you did a good thing here and a bad thing here. Too absurd. And even if such a scorecard were to exist, we would not know the score, because we're incapable of having such knowledge of ourselves. I'm deviating now, I'm digressing, but this is pretty important too. Anyway, it's a wonderful play. I didn't do Act 5 full justice, but it's a great play. It's a great play. Thank you.